2017, I was smuggled out of Iran. And in that process, I found a GPS. Not the type of GPS you're probably thinking about right now. It was just after 8 a.m. on the 10th of February, 2007. I just got into the people smuggler's car, whose name was Ahmed. This old, white, rusty car with grey seats that had oil stains all over it. We were somewhere at the border of Iran and Pakistan. When I got into the car, I noticed a device on Ahmed's dashboard. He was typing in it. I've never seen such a device before. So I looked at Ahmed and I said, Ahmed, what is this device? He looked at me and said, it's a GPS. You put the destination in and it tells you how to get there. On our drive to what Ahmed called the secret house, I watched this device telling us where to take each turn and where to go. So I couldn't help but ask myself, wouldn't it be nice to have one of these devices in all areas of our life that showed us the path forward? We got to the secret house. This house was made of mud in the middle of nowhere. Ahmed guided me inside the room of this house. When I stepped in, I noticed a window on the right-hand side and a fan attached to the roof. And what I also noticed was 9 other people who were also waiting to be smuggled. While I was there, I started to talk to some of these people. Mohammed has been working in Iran to support his family, but he's now going back to see his newborn daughter. Nasser, on the other hand, has been working in Iran to support his dad's cancer treatment, but he's now going back to be with his dad on his final days. Every person had a reason for being there. A bit of time has passed. Ahmed walks in casually into the room with a cup of tea in his hand and says, Yalla, which means come on in Arabic. We all go outside. Ahmed is now leaning against the same white car that we came to the house with 5 seats, and says, we now travel to border. You all need to get in the car. I looked at Ahmed and I said, Ahmed, how are you going to fit all of us in the car? There are 11 of us, and this car can only sit 5. He opened the trunk of the car. And he, of course, picked on the skinny guy to get into the trunk, which was me. Myself, Mohammed, and Nasser got into the trunk. And he somehow fit the other 7 people in the front and back seats. He closes the trunk of the car, and I could hear the front doors and back doors close. We start driving. Here I am at 17, in the trunk of a car, in complete darkness, with 2 people who I've just met. Angry, anxious, and nervous. But to make the matters worse, Mohammed hasn't washed his socks in ages. It smells really bad. You could tell we're not driving on a sealed road. The car was thrumbling really hard, kind of like an aeroplane when it goes through turbulence. The car stops. I could hear Ahmed putting his key into the lock of the trunk. It opens. It was just before sunset. It took me a few moments to get used to the sunlight. I stepped outside, and as I stepped outside, I noticed a dune to my left-hand side. It was about 9 meters in height, 3 times the height of a normal single-story house. Ahmed now gathered us around. His back is to the sunset, and our back is to the dune. And he says, the border of Iran and Pakistan is behind this dune, but we need to wait until it gets completely dark, because behind this dune, there are also border guards. We waited until it got dark, climbed our ways to the top of this dune. From the top of this dune, you could see the border of Iran and Pakistan, clearly distinguishable with barbed wire fencing and lights at equal distances. At this point, Ahmed points to one of the lights and says, do you see that light over there? That is the light you need to run towards. Underneath it, there is an opening through which you can get to the other side. From here on, you're alone. We were 3 kilometers away from the light. We started running. Our feet is sinking into the sand. If you ever run on sand, you know how difficult it is. The only thing you could hear was the sound of our breath and the sound of our footsteps. And the silence of the desert is the only thing that's bringing us comfort. We ran and ran, and we were about halfway mark, and 1.5 kilometer mark. And I thought everything's going to be fine. But the border guards have detected us, and they started shooting at us. The bullets are now flying in the air. I fell to the ground, making myself as small as possible so I don't get shot. That journey over there has taught me about resilience more than anything else. It's taught me that resilience isn't about bouncing back. It's about moving forward. And this act of moving forward becomes a lot easier when you have something that guides our path forward. In hindsight and reflection, I realized on that day, what guided my path forward was an inner GPS that I had. In this inner GPS, G stands for gratitude, P stands for purpose, and S stands for self-confidence. Gratitude, purpose, and self-confidence. As I was lying down on the sand, I asked myself a question. 3, actually. What was I doing there? How did I end up there? I should be back home playing with my friends. Then I remembered why I was there. I grew up in a very poor African family. One morning, I woke up very early in the morning. It was about 11:30. And I saw Dad in the corner. He usually is at work. And I'm like, Dad, what are you doing at home? He said, I can't move my legs. I looked at Dad worked so hard that sometimes he wasn't able to move his legs. So I got over like every other son, started to massage his legs. And I looked at him and I said, Dad, you need to stop doing this to yourself. He put his hand on my shoulder and I said, son, I will continue doing this because I want you to earn a living with your mind. To earn a living with my mind became my purpose. I was always one of the top students at school. At school, I made a really good friend named Reza, who also was Afghan and studied really hard. Both Reza and I fell in love with engineering and wanted to become engineers. I remember the day that I went to Dad and I said, Dad, I want to become an engineer. He was so happy, mainly because in my culture, you're either an engineer, doctor, or a failure. The time has come for me to pick the subject, to narrow down my subjects towards engineering. I stepped into my principal's office. He was sitting behind his big brown desk, leaning on his black recliner chair. I passed him my report card and I said, Mr. Nadari, my grades are really good. I want to become an engineer. He looked at me and said, you can't study engineering. What do you mean? I can't study engineering. He said, you can't study engineering because you're an Afghan. What do you mean I can't study engineering because I am an Afghan? Ali, you will never study engineering. I walked out of that room feeling shattered, thinking that pursuing my purpose is no longer possible, until I had an opportunity to come to Australia. The day before I left, Reza gave me the biggest hug and said, Ali, I would do anything to be in your shoes. Go and make the most out of it. As I was lying in the sand, remembering Reza, remembering Dad, and remembering the opportunity to pursue my purpose filled me with gratitude. And with that gratitude, I picked my head up and looked at the light I was told to run towards. I got up and I started running, despite the bullets still flying in the air. On that day, that light was the next step towards my purpose, and therefore it was my purpose. Mark Twain says, the most important days of our lives are the day we're born and the day we find out why. There was a 12-year study in Victoria University in Canada and Washington University in the USA. They studied the impact of purpose on adults 65 years and older. Memory loss due to depressive symptoms is a common thing in those ages, but this study found that those who had purpose had less memory loss. In other words, purpose protected them against depression. But the question is, how do we find our purpose? One definition that resonates with me the most is the ikigai concept. Something that we're good at, something that we love, something the world needs, and something that we would get paid for. On that day, I had purpose. I loved engineering and I knew I was good at it. I knew the world needed it. And then someday, I would get paid for it without knowing that I would rack up a $50,000 student debt at first. But that's besides the point. I kept running, and I was about 1 kilometer away from the light that I fell back to the ground. The sound of gunshots became way too overwhelming to continue. I had gratitude, I had purpose, but I needed something else to help me to travel the remaining 1 kilometer. In that point, I hear the sound from behind. Muhammad and Nasser are running from behind me. Muhammad, the guy with the smelly socks. And he says, Ali, come on! Hearing Muhammad's voice was all I needed for me to get the remaining courage to continue. Now I had gratitude, I had purpose, the self-confidence to travel the remaining 1 kilometer. Muhammad, Nasser, and I kept running. We made it to the light and to the other side, where the rest of the journey continued. The reason I wanted to share that story is because while most of us here won't ever get shot at life, literally, trust me, it's a good thing from experience. Bullets of life comes at us in a different form. Life pressures, illnesses, losing loved ones. And in the face of these bullets of lives, we have two options. Option number one, you can fall to the ground like I did on that day, making ourselves as small as possible and play it safe. Or option two, you can get in alignment with our inner GPS. So we all live the life we are meant to live. Since coming here, the same inner GPS has guided my path forward. I did graduate with first-class honors in engineering. And now as a speaker, my purpose is to change mind and hearts. So we look at personal, professional, and organization challenges differently. On that day, in Ahmed's car, I asked myself a question. Wouldn't it be nice to have a GPS that guides our lives in all areas of our lives, without knowing that I had it within me all along? And the beautiful thing about this inner GPS is every single one of us here has this within them. In the face of life's most challenging situations, a different perspective will bring gratitude. Purpose guides our path forward. We would have to just discover it. And self-confidence will give us the courage to continue moving forward. We would just have to build it. Now, imagine the life we all could live if we all lived in alignment with our inner GPS. Imagine the life we could create if we lived with gratitude, purpose, and self-confidence. Imagine the world we could create if we lived with gratitude, purpose, and self-confidence. Thank you.